And Mine Crypto here. I hope we're all having a wonderful day. And today I'm going to try and answer a question that I get asked a lot. But before we do that, please remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any further videos, and drop me a comment. You'd be helping me out so much. Please remember, I'm not a financial advisor and none of this is financial advice, and none of the information provided in this video should ever be seen or taken as a signal to buy or to sell. But before we move on, we look at the crypto bubbles. And as we can see, we're ranked at 70 with a market cap of $1.23 billion, currently sitting just above that $100 at 102. People getting bored, people getting frustrated that it's going sideways, but this for me is a great opportunity. I will keep dollar cost averaging at these prices. And as we can see, 24-hour volume is still quite low at $15 million. We can see we're up 0.5% in the hour and up 1.7% in the day, but still down 6.3% in the week. And we have a look at the quant exchange reserves. First of all, we can see the spot exchanges are currently going sideways pretty much at 247,000 still on the exchanges. If we look at the overall exchanges, including derivatives, we are looking at 1.538 million. Again, just going sideways constantly. Now, moving on to the question in hand, a lot of people constantly ask when these community gateways. Now, if you don't know what community gateways are, it's like staking when you can earn a yield from your quant. Now, everybody's wanting this. Everybody really wants this so much and wants it to happen like yesterday. And so I get asked this question a lot because people want to work their quant, which is absolutely fine. But we need to answer some questions before doing so. Now, the first one is the Secure Asset Transfer Protocol, which is SATP. So where does that come in? Now, that's quite important because it's standards. Standards need to be created before Quant will release these community gateways. Now, if we understand them first, so the objective is there is currently an interoperability problem in many digital asset networks where assets in one network can't be moved easily to another network. And the problem is more acute in the case of private asset networks where external entities have no visibility into the state of an asset in the private network. So one example of this is private shipping logistics networks where the digital bill of lading as the value-bearing data object is not accessible to external entities such as trade finance networks seeking to issue letters of credit based on bill of lading. A second example is regulated digital representations of real-world private assets, such as property ownership certificates and regulated government-issued digital currencies. The goal of the SATP working group will be to develop a standard protocol which operates between two peer gateways for the purpose of transferring digital assets and asset related data between an originator in the origin asset network to the beneficiary in the destination asset network. So basically, they're creating a standard, a protocol that is standardized across all networks. And for this needs to take place before anything happens. So it continues problem, space, and architecture. To begin addressing these challenges, SATP will employ the gateway paradigm as a means for digital assets to move from one asset network to another through a standardized asset transfer message flow implemented between peer gateways. The same gateway paradigm will be utilized for sharing of asset related data between two asset networks when one or both are private networks. Thirdly, the gateway model will be used to address the case of coordinated asset swaps occurring simultaneously in two distinct asset networks. A swap here means that both users require identities on both networks and that they agree to perform two local exchanges in a coordinated fashion. Each gateway represents one network or one system, and the SATP performs a voluntary transfer of a digital asset from the origin network to the destination network in such a way that evidence of the transfer can be obtained from both networks by a trusted third-party audit entity in the case of disputes. Both the origin and the destination networks are assumed to share a common understanding of the digital asset. So the trusted third-party audit entity in the case of disputes. And I'm assuming at these points, this is the gateways operating. There might be several gateways representing the same asset network. It's assumed that the same peer gateways representing respective networks are participating in the entire asset transfer sequence from beginning to end. The SATP commences with the assumption that the originator and beneficiary are exchanging entities have agreed out of band to proceed on the transfer or exchange of assets or asset-related data, and that both the origin and destination asset networks can support the type of asset or data transferred. The service providers who own or operate the respective gateways are assumed to have regulatory compliance when needed with regards to the digital asset or assets have been agreed to facilitate the transfer or exchange between the networks. In the case of asset transfers, a key requirement of SATP is to ensure that the digital asset is valid in one network only at any given time. This means that SATP must ensure that properties of atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability of the underlying networks are satisfied in an asset transfer, and that commitments or rollbacks are supported in case of a success or failure of the asset transfer operations among the participating networks. As we can see, this is very important. This is the standardization, first of all, before we can see any form of community gateways. And these standards are very important for that message flow, like we've talked about just a moment ago in this article. Now, if we look here, we move over to the atlanticcouncil.org. We can see the Internet Engineering Task Force, which is also a partner within creation of the SATP. It says here, the Internet Engineering Task Force is deeply involved in the development of standards to enhance blockchain interoperability, focusing on the SATP. This protocol is designed to enable seamless transfers of digital assets across diverse distributed ledger technologies by leveraging a network of trusted gateways, akin to the role border gateway routers played in the early internet. Such an approach offers a scalable and ledger agnostic solutions for the rapidly evolving digital asset ecosystem. SATP facilitates asset transfers through a structured process that includes three main stages: transition initiation, lock evidence verification, and commitment establishment. The protocol ensures that digital assets are exclusively valid within one network at any time, adopting a transfer mechanism that maintains the asset's integrity and uniqueness. This is achieved through the strategic use of gateway endpoints, which manage the transfer process, ensuring transparent, auditable transactions that adhere to atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, which we just talked about a moment ago. The SATP framework comprises of a comprehensive set of API endpoints and resources for initiation and execution of asset transfers. It also aims to facilitate the integration and management of digital asset transactions, contributing to a more efficient and secure digital economy. So this is again all working towards those standards. So before we get those community gateways, we need these message flows. We need this standardization to come prior to those being released. Now, we also see this from Construction Trader Eve. Again, question, when gateways? I say listen very carefully here. And we can see here Dominic Hobson and Tony McLaughlin talking about said gateways, nodes, whatever you want to call them. Have a listen to this.
Have you thought at all about how that interoperability problem might be solved, as you point out, if we've got different institutions using different tokenization engines, creating their own protocols? And as you indicated at the outset, some people might not even do this on a blockchain. You don't have to use blockchain technology. So is there anything to be said beyond what you've just said at this point, that interoperability is not yet something you're addressing, or is it something you've started to worry about already?
I think there is interesting work out there on interoperability. There's public information about the work that Swift, for example, have done to bridge different CBDCs and other blockchain environments. So I think these bridges will come to exist. To my mind, these bridges will have to be run by trusted institutions. I'm not sure that these bridges are only technical constructs. And indeed, it would be nice to think that at some stage, we might be able to move towards some kind of what I call a virtual layer one concept, which is whether people are running on different technologies, they can act together as if they're the same layer one. Now, that's not a trivial problem to solve, requires a lot of collaboration, and it's not clear what the path would be to reaching that virtual layer one outcome. But indeed, in the RLN environment, we don't think there will be one ledger to rule them all.
You think it requires a public initiative of some sort to get to that virtual layer one you're describing? Because it's a very powerful idea if you have this common layer and then everybody, entrepreneurs, existing companies, startups, fintechs, can start to develop, if you like, applications on top of that. So it's an open system. Do you think that needs to be publicly owned and controlled in some way? Because it requires all that collaboration you just talked about.
I would point again to something which is in the public domain, which is the Global Layer 1 initiative by the MES, which is hinting towards moving in that direction. And again, public information about developments such as the Canton network by Digital Assets and other initiatives by providers of private permission ledgers to demonstrate interoperability. If we're going to experience positive network effects and get hundreds of institutions operating on a state machine or a virtual layer 1, then we need to solve the interoperability, and we need to start the conversation going about how we actually encourage people to run nodes on these distributed infrastructures. Because frankly, if there's no incentive for participants to run nodes, if people are just APIing into hosted nodes, you might question the idea of using DLT in the first place. So I think people want to have the assurance that if they're going to run nodes, they'll have sufficient other people to talk to, and that they won't have to run a node for a bunch of individual silos.
We hear very, very interesting there. Talking about global standards, the network effect, so that public initiative, which Dominic pointed out there, publicly controlled, and obviously Tony McLaughlin there, talking about people running those nodes. And we can hear here from Gilbert Verdian. The question was, Gilbert, can you elaborate on the current status of ODAP and explain what the extent of Quant integrates into it? So let's have a listen to this.
Good question. So ODAP is the Open Digital Asset Protocol. So it's something that we created and invited MIT, and we've put that into IETF. And so this is a collaboration with a number of different partners. It includes telecoms companies, it includes technology companies, academia, governments, etc. So ODAP is a gateway protocol that we had the vision to create quite a while ago, because this whole idea of Overledger was not an overnight thing. It's been many years in the making, and so we wanted to create a protocol that can show the routing and the interoperability between the different digital assets. So for an example, you are a bank and you hold your own dollar. You created, let's just say JP Morgan. Like, you created the JP Morgan dollar. It's on a global network. It's within JP Morgan. But how does everyone else know how to access the JP Morgan dollar? How do you get to it? And so ODAP is a way to create interoperable links at the protocol layer to identify different gateways. So JP Morgan would have a gateway in front, like an Overledger gateway, and it will allow the rest of the network to find where the JP Morgan dollar is and where the digital asset is, and to transact with it, but also create the rules of transactions and put in the controls from a compliance perspective. So you could say, I wish to transact, $100. Here's the KYC and compliance bit. Everything's done, and then it's authorized to transact, and the protocol handles that. So this is our way of establishing that mainstream adoption and creating this global ecosystem and this global network of networks where everyone can bring their own network. It could be private, it could be blockchain networks, it could be permissionless, and having the gateways, an ODAP gateway, you'll be able to access the rest of the network. And so for us, Overledger Gateway is the first ODAP gateway that's being built, because we're at the forefront of that technology. There will be others later on, but we're the first out of the gate.
And then we hear further on, and the question is, will LCX run Quant Gateway so customers can gain some interest by providing the Quant liquidity? Let's have a listen to this.
So those new versions of the gateways will be out as part of the Overledger Network release. So once that happens, which is the first half of 2021, and once that happens, then we start integrating with our partners. So we've got lots of partners lined up who would, similar to what I explained with ODAP, they've got an existing network, such as the LCX network, and you've got all your ecosystem. If you host an Overledger Gateway there, then you open up that network to the rest of the Overledger network and everyone else on it. So if there's 10 LCX size companies that are doing the same, then you can all interoperate and have access to each other's transactions, digital assets, blockchains, etc. So it's really building that network effect for scale through the Overledger network, through our partners like LCX.
Building the network effect. But first, we require those standards to build on that. And we can see this from Jeff. when the behemoth institutions are starting to echo what you envisioned for 20 plus years, awaiting standards, interoperability, and legislation for the value to flow freely between literally everything, the time is nigh. SATP, due this summer, ISO WG7 this year, time to leapfrog. And we can hear this from the Bank of International Settlements, stating standards.
I have another question on technological issues that comes from Joanna Wright from DL News. She says private sector tokenization projects have stumbled over interoperability and scaling challenges. How are you thinking about these limitations on blockchain tech?
Yeah, maybe I can take that, Andreas. So thank you, Joanna, for that question. I think you're absolutely right that various projects that have used blockchain, in particular public blockchains, have really come up against these very hard limits on scalability as well as interoperability. And this is why what I said at the beginning of my opening remarks is very, very important. If you have the monetary system centered around the central bank, we know that that works because that's our current system. And what we're going to do is basically to take what works and make it better. And as I said in my concluding remarks, the objective here is to perfect financial intermediation. And we know that that's scalable. We know that that works. And so I think this is the big leap as compared to these other blockchain-based innovation attempts, which are clearly very interesting. But as we wrote about many times in our publications, if you're trying to achieve settlement through decentralized consensus, I mean that is a very, very difficult challenge to actually overcome. And so I think this is the reason why we believe this is much more promising as a way to solve real-world problems rather than the previous attempts.
As we can see it, awaiting standards, interoperability, and legislation for value to flow freely. So we can also see this from Quant Network, together with other members of the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications Standards Committee. We conducted a survey on standardization of digital ledger technology. Within the survey, we have identified and categorized existing publications and working groups and have provided recommendations on where to focus future standardization efforts. So standardization can be defined as a process of establishing best practices within a particular domain, as well as providing an indication of a domain's maturity. By adhering to specific standards, implementations can reduce the number of silos, seamlessly achieve interoperability with other solutions, improve and maintain security, and decrease the risk of a fragmented ecosystem. Standardization is a prerequisite for full enterprise adoption of DLT. We know that adopting a standardized approach can drastically reduce time spent on research and development and minimize the risk associated with DLT adoption. Much of the current fragmented landscape of DLT networks is built upon technology with little to no built-in interoperability. For DLTs to interoperate on a native level, industry-wide standardization on the underlying protocols and data formats is crucial. Our recent paper, Implementing Secure Bridges, Learning from the Secure Asset Transfer Protocol, we use the analogy of walled gardens to describe DLT networks, which alludes to the inability of assets to flow freely between networks, which we know is one of the biggest barriers of widespread DLT adoption. The paper also looks at how reported security issues in proprietary solutions are a key motivation for standardization of open protocols. An example of this is crypto bridges, which were exploited to steal over $1 billion worth of assets in 2022 alone. The sheer scale of these attacks have been a catalyst for change and is a key driver of the standardization on open protocols. So you can see here, for DLTs to interoperate on a native level, industry-wide standardization on the underlying protocols and data formats is crucial. So it's very, very important. Before gateways will ever be released, we need this standardization. Now, I see this from Greg Lunt. He talks about gateway staking here. We don't know exactly when gateways are coming, but they're coming. QSATP waiting music. Community gateways will kill two birds with one stone, decentralizing the network and allowing quant holders to generate yield. Stay patient. Now, you might ask, when will this happen? And I know they are coming, But we look at this draft, and many people have said it's coming in the summer. And as we can see here from the data tracker, from the IETF, who happen to be a big part of SATP, you can see here, associated working group milestone, July 2024. Will we see gateways open up once this standardization is created? And therefore, we start to see these community gateways become a thing. So there you go, guys. Just thought I'd give you a nice update and sort of a run through on what we need to see. So we SATP followed by the community gateways. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe. Please hit that notification bell and drop me a comment to let me know your thoughts. All the best, and I'll catch you later.